I can't screw it up. Not on my, not on my watch. It's been in business over 100 years. I
Yeah.
can't screw this thing up. And we're always listening because we're woodworkers. We're not
Mm,
early education professionals. So
mm,
when they speak and say, hey, you know what you're missing in your line? We want to listen to them. It doesn't matter what you'd like to do or the vision that you have. If you're all alone and the folks on your team don't share that vision and aren't united or aligned, nothing
mm.
good's going to happen. Having key people who want to be at work, who want to do their best, rewarding them, appreciating them, and getting out of their way when they've got a good idea. And you don't
Yeah.
want to trip them up. Teamwork. That's what I would say.
Joining me today on Empowered Owners is Mike Jablonski. Mike is the former owner-operator of Whitney Brothers, a 121-year-old manufacturer of furniture for early learning and childcare environments that joined Empowered Ventures earlier this year. Mike, thanks for joining me on Empowered Owners.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you again.
You too. You too. So you and I talked about maybe doing this a long time ago, and this that I mean is Whitney Brothers is a 121-year-old company, and like there's so much history there, and you have so much history there, and it's just a really great company with that's fascinating history. So we thought it might be fun to get together and like capture, some of the knowledge. I mean, there's no way we're going to cover everything that happens in 120 years, but it'll be fun to hear everything you've learned from your time at Whitney Brothers, and and see where it goes. So thank you for doing this.
Happy to share it, Chris, with what I know. Again, as you mentioned, over 100 years of history. I've got exposed to 25 years of exposure to it. So I'm happy to share what I've learned along the way.
Yeah. Why don't we start with a little bit more about you, just to kind of set it up. So when did you join, Whitney Brothers?
Yeah, I joined Whitney Brothers in 2000, and I had a career in wood products manufacturing. I had been in the area and knew of Whitney Brothers and sort of had that as a long-term goal that was sort of like the big leagues. I'd like to work for Whitney Brothers one day. And so I got an opportunity to join as a plant manager in 2000 and was there until, as you mentioned, till earlier in 2025. So I've had a 25-year career with Whitney Brothers.
Yeah. What about it from afar kind of did you notice, like when you weren't part of it yet, like, but you said you were aware of it and knew about, like, what stood out from afar?
Yeah. So, always envious, working for other small manufacturers, always envious of the equipment Whitney Brothers had, the facility they had. They're located in downtown Keene. And so that seemed desirable. People that I knew that had worked there were reputable. And it just, again, from equipment, just the way they did it, their product line, the fact that they offered a catalog and a website. And it seemed like an awful lot of the way they ran their business was, first class.
Interesting. So you joined, and then did you begin to did you do research after you joined, like to learn more about the company history, or did it just did you kind of absorb that over time?
Yeah, so a lot of that came from my boss at the time, who became my partner, David. And David's father was one of the owners. His parents were one of the owners, and this is going back to the 1960s. And so David had a lot of stories from when he was a child, when his parents owned it and operated it. And so I got a lot of history and a lot of stories from David, and then obviously picked up a little more along the way.
Interesting. So, to the best of your ability, what if you just give us from the beginning, like Whitney Brothers history? Like, when did it start, and how did it start, and all, maybe the early years, so to speak?
Yeah, sure. So started in 1904, started in the next town over from Keene, a small town called Marlborough, New Hampshire, and started out primarily focused on toys and wooden housewares, little walker wagons and little wheelbarrows and little wooden items. And I think it's just amazing that look back at some of the old black and white pictures of people. These are they were on the Minnewawa River in Marlborough, water powered equipment. So there was a wheel getting turned by the river with shafts running through the factory, and you'd push a leather belt onto the pulley to get a machine started. And they were making wooden toys with water powered equipment And I just think it's amazing that they were able to be profitable, support families, and then survive some very, very difficult times during the Great Depression. World War II happened during their early beginnings. And I think it's amazing that they continue to think about, what problems we have. And we do have, pandemics and tariffs and things that interrupt and trip up our businesses. But these had world wars, the Great Depression. So I think about what they did, and kind of have to tip your hat to what they did compared to maybe what we have to go through. But so they were making wooden toys. And one of the challenges that they ran into early on that I learned about is during the war, they declared pine as a strategic material, wartime material. And so a lot of their products were made from pine, and that they couldn't use that. And after like the 1940s, after the war. And so they changed over to hardwoods, and they never looked back. Once they discovered sources and methods for working with hardwoods, they never turned back. So I think that might be one of the things that maybe was a benefit, from the difficult times. This, they transitioned into some maybe more higher quality materials.
Interesting. And who founded Whitney Brothers?
So there were three brothers, Mark, Charles, and Fred. I have to look at my notes, sorry. And there were three brothers. And sadly, one of the brothers in 1908 was killed in an industrial accident in the factory. One of those wooden belts that he had to steer onto the pulley to activate a machine actually got caught up, and he got caught up in it. Sadly, he died. But there were three brothers who were the Whitney brothers that started the company. And it was passed down to family members up until like the 1960s, where there were some folks who were not Whitney brothers that were able to buy into the company. And that's when the Stabler family, David Stabler, Griffin Stabler, Lois Stabler, bought into the company and was able to get it into sort of non-Whitney brothers' hands.
So in a sense, if I'm hearing you correctly, there's kind of been three families essentially that have owned Whitney Brothers over the whole 120 years?
Yeah, there was one other partner, non-Whitney brothers, Bernie Barinholtz. So he was in with the ownership for a brief period of time in those 1960s when their things were transitioning out of the Whitney brothers. And
so four families, including the Jablonskis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so they've had, again, a lot of adversity, Chris, with fires. There were multiple fires in their facilities, rebuilt, moved to different facilities in Marlboro. And then in 1980, they moved to Keene, to the current facility. And that was a big deal to make that move. There were some environmental changes that they had to make from, paint finishes and things that had to get cleaned up to meet the city of Keene's code. And again, I think those things helped the company kind of improve along the way.
Super interesting. How would you describe the evolution of the product line over 120 years? I mean, toys at the beginning to, institution, commercial grade, furniture, that Whitney Brothers does today. Like that's a pretty big evolution.
It is, Chris. And I think that's a big milestone for Whitney Brothers that might sort of get overlooked, where it went from toys and doll cradles and things that, we know in today's age would be clearly imported, unfortunately, would be imported at a low cost. They transitioned, again, I attribute that to Griff Stabler, David's dad, for transitioning from toys into more school early learning furniture. Again, some of those products could transition into an early learning environment, but other things like easels and bookshelves and storage cabinets became a little bit more prevalent, and that really carried the company. That if that never happened, I don't think there'd be a Whitney Brothers in business today. At least not manufacturing in the United States.
Yeah, and about when do you think that introduction of not just commodity toys but other products, maybe higher value products? When do you think? I think that was starting in the late 1960s into the 1970s. Okay. Yep. And you don't make any toys today. I don't think they don't make any toys. Things with play value, but we would, a kitchen unit, little sink, stove, refrigerator would have play value, but not what we think of as a toy that you might see for sale at a Walmart or local toy store. Again, just because they're small and have a lot of some touch labor, you wouldn't see that typically in the U.S. manufactured. Yeah. I don't know if this is exactly about Whitney Brothers, but it's pretty amusing to me to go all the way back and look at the list of what toys were like wet wheelbarrows, clothes drying racks, wooden
Yep.
snow shovels, like things
Yes.
that are just very adult sounding, but they were considered toys back in the early
Yeah. There were
1900s.
some wooden wares. I think you would call
Mm,
some of those wooden wares, some of those
mm,
more residential products. Like you said, the
yeah,
snow shovel is one. Again, I would it must have been pretty strong to be shoveling snow here in New Hampshire with a wooden shovel.
yeah.
But they did. They did.
Amazing. What
Yeah.
what other surprising things have you heard or even, learned about the Whitney Brothers history? Other moments that really stuck out, other moments that really stuck out to you, or anything else that
It's
comes to
just
mind?
it's humbling, Chris, to think again about the adversity,
Mm,
whether it's fires in long time woodworking facilities isn't uncommon, but
mm,
these are fires that completely decimated, burnt right down to the foundation, and had to rebuild.
mm,
Fires, floods. The adversity that I think they went through, again, wars and depressions and things that that we wouldn't think about today.
yeah.
Again, with that long history. And so, when I was owner of Whitney Brothers, I thought about those things.
Mm,
Thought about, I can't screw it up. Not on my not on my watch. It lasts. It's been in business over 100 years. I
yeah.
can't screw this thing up. So it was quite a burden. But half joking, half serious.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the guy that sinks 100-year-old company on your watch. So besides other reasons to be motivated, that was another one with just so much history there. But a
Mm,
lot of adversity, and again, a lot of folks. Good folks who would come to work at Whitney
mm,
Brothers that I was the ones that I was fortunate enough to work with and learned a lot from. A lot of history there.
mm. Something that struck me as I first met you and got to know the company was, I would say, like the pride that you and your team have in the products, like the
Yeah.
actual products themselves, just this really high pride in the workmanship and the design, and that just comes through so strong with the branding and everything within the people. Was that there when you first joined?
It was, Chris, and I'd like to say that our team took it and really enhanced that and
Mm,
exaggerated that. But obviously, Whitney Brothers always had products that were regarded in terms of desirability and durability, and that were reliable. But they had a catalog. Some of the older catalogs from the 1960s and 70s were 3, 4, 5 pages deep. In fact, many times they wouldn't print the date on them; they would use them for multiple years.
mm,
And so you look at what Whitney Brothers has been able to do in the last 5 or 10 years in terms of product development, product design, innovation, and that's really been one of the reasons for the growth and what Whitney Brothers has been able to accomplish in the last 5 years, in particular, winning design awards.
mm.
That's not an accident. It's an awful lot of dedicated and knowledgeable people that have been driving that product innovation. That's a big competitive advantage for Whitney Brothers in the marketplace.
Yeah. So there was kind of a kernel of that there, probably, of this pride and workmanship and everything. But then you and the folks you work with, the team you put together, really kind of leaned into that. It sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Chris. And a big driver for that, a big part of that, are the folks who know staff members at Whitney Brothers who are currently in education. So
Mm,
um,
mm.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my wife Lynn or
Yeah,
my daughter
yeah.
Celia. But there's a number of people who either have been in education or have family members, and we're constantly being reminded of, hey, you know what you guys should have, or you know what you guys need, and we're
Mm,
always listening because we're in Whitney, we're in the business. We're manufacturing, we're woodworkers, we're not
mm,
early education professionals. So
mm,
when they speak and say, hey, you know what you're missing in your life, we want to listen to them. And so we've been fortunate to have those kinds of people who have been giving us that type of input and that type of suggestions. And not every suggestion is a good suggestion, but we always want to be listening for those. And then if there's a kernel of good idea or value there, we want to, what we call Whitneyize it. We want to bring it to the development team and
mm,
have them exploit it. And our development team was really fantastic and continues to be great, where there's multiple people from different backgrounds and different ways of thinking about things. There's engineers and on the, at the table saying, hey, I hear your idea, but that isn't going to go through the factory very well. Or there's supply people saying, hey, what materials are we going to use for that? We need to make sure that we can get a steady supply and that's consistent and affordable. And then you need people that are creative to say, I don't care whether you can make it. This is a really cool idea. And then we just have to Whitneyize it and bring it all together. So having that product development team has been very, very rewarding. I think that's been a key part of the growth we've seen at Whitney Brothers.
I love it. I love that verb, Whitneyize it.
Yeah.
So a business that lasts 120 years, you mentioned that has to get through adversity, major periods of adversity. Also probably has to reinvent itself a few times over the course of that. We've mentioned, toys to, great high quality furniture. I think maybe I'm wondering if you would agree with this. Another reinvention probably happened under your watch, just modernizing, let's say. So I think you had to put a lot of thought and time and effort into what's the Whitney Brothers of the future going to look like. How did you decide to do that? That seems like a big decision to make, maybe even a risky decision to make.
Yeah. And so I think, Chris, when I was hired, my boss, David, at the time, he really valued education. He valued a travel opportunity. And he really valued outside expertise. And so when I first took the job in 2000, before I actually started work, when we were talking about me coming to work, David said, hey, I'm going to need you to go to China. We're looking at importing some baby cribs. Baby cribs were big business for Whitney Brothers. There were very few manufacturers of baby cribs in the United States, and they were looking at importing. And he wanted me to go over to China and source some factories and to help him make the decision of whether we should import. And so we ultimately didn't. There was some serious quality issues with, and as you can imagine, with infants, there can't be any room for quality issues. But the point is that David really valued opportunity for travel, opportunity for education, to see how other people in other parts of the world do things. And then understanding that as good as we think we are, there's other people that are experts in certain things that they can, if we invite them in, they can help us with our business. And so that opportunity, that training that David gave me, that way of thinking, really helped a lot. And so some of the ways that I got to see how other factories were operated. There's technical tours that go in other countries. So I got on a tech tour to Germany that one of the machine manufacturers put together, invited us, a small group of Americans, to go over to Germany and travel. We saw the factories where they make the machines, and then we saw some of the factories that use those machines in manufacturing, and whether it's kitchen cabinets or closets. And so we got to see 200-300 square foot factories producing hundreds of cabinets an hour, running with 3 or 4 people with automation. And that was just like, wow, like I know I can't afford that today, but someday. And it's just sort of looking into the future. And it was the same thing with technical tours, that I was fortunate enough to travel to Italy and to some other countries that are, sort of lead the way in the woodworking equipment market. And so getting to see how they are doing things kind of planted a seed to, okay, we can't do all this today or tomorrow, but in time, maybe we can develop a path to getting some of these machines and these capabilities in the software, and have sort of a long-term vision to streamline some of these and automate some of these things. And as you know, Chris, a lot of young kids coming out of high school, they don't want to go in manufacturing anymore. So it's difficult to find people. So, being able to automate helps us continue to be competitive.
Yeah, that's great. What would you say, advice giving to business owners, other leaders of businesses, just lessons learned from your career? What stands out for you? Like things you've learned over I had 40 years of a really highly successful career.
Yeah, that's a big question. There's lots of good answers, Chris, but I think what comes to mind is people and teamwork. And it doesn't matter what you know, it doesn't matter what you'd like to do or the vision that you have. If you're all alone and the folks on your team don't share that vision and aren't united or aligned, nothing good's going to happen. And so having a team that understands the goal. And even if it's a mediocre plan, if you're all working on it together, you'll be successful. And so, having key people who want to be at work, who want to do their best, rewarding them, appreciating them, and getting out of their way when they've got a good idea, and you don't want to trip them up. Teamwork, employee satisfaction, employee appreciation. That more so than automation, more so than anything technical. It's all good. It's all important. Teamwork. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's great. You were kind of a Keene guy, right? You grew up in the area as well.
Yeah. So, yep. Both Lynn and I were Keene State College graduates, and we kind of consider ourselves townies. We love the area. It's a great place to raise a family. We're very, very blessed and a good place for manufacturing.
Yeah. If I were you, that would make me very proud to have been a steward of if anyone ever comes to Keene, they can see Whitney Brothers is right there downtown, like really great. It's just a visual presence in the downtown area, and it's an 120-year-old employer. I would imagine there's a lot of satisfaction in what you've accomplished at Whitney Brothers.
There is, for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike. One more question then. What would you think the Whitney Brothers might feel if they could look down from heaven? Are they happy that their business that they started 120 years ago is still going strong today?
Absolutely. They're happy and they're proud of what we're doing, Chris. And I can say that with somewhat confidence. We actually had an exhibit at the local historical society, and one of the sons, it would be a grandson to one of the founders. His name is Richard Whitney. Richard is an internationally renowned artist who lives in Stoddard, New Hampshire, just north of Keene. And Richard came to the exhibit and sought me out and said, "My dad would be so happy. We're just so happy with what you guys are doing." Him and his wife asked if they could come to the factory and get a tour. We gave him the tour, and he said, "My dad would be amazed at what you guys are doing. He'd be so happy with you guys." So I kind of got that blessing, third generation blessing. So I think they'd be happy with it, Chris. And the fact that we're employee owned now, I think again, just rings the bell. And it's funny when the announcement went out that Whitney Brothers was sold and it hit social media, there were a number of people who were past employees who said, it's really too bad it wasn't sold to the employees. They didn't understand what it meant. And I said, no, it really was. And they were saying it's too bad. So I feel like the Whitney Brothers looking down, I think they'd be very, very happy and proud of the work that they did to help get us to this point. I think they'd be very happy with it.
That's so wonderful. Thank you, Mike. This has been a really great catching of so much history in a brief amount of time here. But thank you again for choosing Empowered Ventures for Whitney Brothers' future. And thank you for coming on Empowered Owners today, Mike. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Chris. Thanks. Yeah, you're welcome.